Okay. Welcome to MACOY's University Speaker Series. Today's panel features students studying humanities. Before getting started, just a reminder, this session is being recorded. Also, if you have any questions during the duration of the interview period, please feel free to type them in the chat and we will make sure to address them towards the end. My name is Arian and I will be interviewing Diego from the University of Alberta. So to start this session off, Diego, would you like to say a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so like you know, my name is Diego. I recently graduated from the University of Alberta. I have a Bachelor of Arts with a major in economics and a minor in political science. I also recently started working as an analyst with a fintech company called Global Shares. I work remotely now, but it's located in Calgary.
So how long have you been studying for?
I started in 2017. I took 4.5 years, 9 semesters to finish my degree.
How are you liking the course?
I enjoyed it. I'm lucky enough to pick a field that I enjoy doing. I loved all my economics classes, loved political science, so I definitely enjoyed it.
What made you choose economics?
So I'll make this answer a bit more general, so it's applicable to everybody. Whenever you pick a degree, whatever you want to do post high school, there are 3 things that you need to take into account. The first one is, of course, are you going to enjoy it? The second one, are you good at it? There's some things you're just not good at. For example, I'm terrible at writing. And the last thing you need to focus on, which is probably the most important, and it often gets overlooked, and that isn't marketable. Are you going to be able to find a job after you graduate with this degree? So when I initially went to university, I only thought of 2 of those things. Is it marketable, and am I good at it? So that led me to apply to biochemistry. My first semester, I was in biochemistry. I wanted to be a pharmacist. I had no idea what a pharmacist did. I just knew that they made a lot of money. After about a month and a half of university, I shadowed a pharmacist for 2 days, and it was terrible. I did not enjoy it at all. Not a fan. I switched almost immediately. And I did find something that fit all 3 of the categories. I liked it. I'm good at it. And I have a job now, so I guess it's marketable.
Did your parents or any other family members have an effect on your decision?
Yeah, well, they more affected where I went to school. I went to school at the University of Alberta in Edmonton. I have lots of family there. Made transition a lot easier. I have automatic friends in the form of cousins. They didn't so much affect what I chose to do.
Did you take any electives, and if so, which ones?
Yes, you're going to have to take electives in any program.
Okay.
I've taken from anthropology to philosophy all at the 100 level. And I'll tell you right now, they're going to be frustrating because they are not relevant to what you want to do at all. For example, I know that you humans have bicuspids to make food eating easier, just like chimpanzees. Is that relevant? Am I ever going to use that? No, I'm not. But if you go into those classes with an open mind, you actually will take something away. And that's something I definitely advise in favor of because you aren't getting out of the electives no matter what. So try going into them with an open mind. Try to take away as much as possible because you are paying almost $600 for the class, so you might as well learn something from it.
So do you need electives to graduate?
Yes, you do. You're going to need electives from a bunch of different departments. For example, for an arts degree, you need a certain amount from sciences, so you'll have to take either introduction to biology, chemistry, physics, something like that. You'll need 2 language classes, credits, and you'll also need some arts electives.
So how did you find the application process?
The application progress to the university. Well, to the University of Alberta, it's quite easy. They just look at your grades. However, different universities require different things. Some of them want an essay. Some of them want just a short paragraph about yourself. So what I definitely advise you to do is email someone at the university. It is their entire job to help you apply. So they will have all the resources for you. They'll be able to walk you through it every step of the way. Even if you email just the general university email, they'll direct you to the right person, and they're pretty good at getting back to you quickly.
Did you apply to any other universities?
No, I didn't. I just applied to the University of Alberta. But that's probably a bad decision. Apply to a few of them just in case you don't get in, but I only applied to one, and that worked out for me. But don't do it. It's a bad idea.
How did you decide on University of Alberta? What factors came into play for you?
Like I mentioned, my family lives there. I have lots of connections in Edmonton. Also, at the time, it was a top, I don't know if it still is, but it was a top 5 ranked school. So I knew the quality of education I'd be getting would be good if I went there. So those two combined made the decision pretty easy for me.
How did you find your first year?
Well, like I mentioned, my first year I was studying biochemistry, well, for the first semester at least. That wasn't very fun. I didn't like it that much. But after when I transitioned over to economics, I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's a lot different from high school, but I think you're going to be getting into that next.
Yeah, it's coming up in a bit. What did you expect in the first week of your school semester, your very first week?
Sorry, can you elaborate a bit on what did I expect?
Yeah, so the very first week of your very first school semester at university, were there any activities dedicated to first years or extra resources for first years attending university?
Yeah, before classes actually started, there was like an introductory type thing where they take you around the university, show you all the main buildings. They'll help you find the buildings where your classes are located, which is a lot of help. And you should definitely consider doing that because I know the University of Alberta has 40,000 students in it. So it's a giant campus that you're going to have to try and navigate. They also do have some fun activities, like they have a pancake breakfast every day for the first week. A few food trucks pull up, stuff like that.
Do you believe that high school prepares students for university?
Kind of. It definitely prepares you for in the knowledge sense because university builds off of high school. However, the transition is quite different. Like your high school teachers, they care about you. It's your job to make sure that you have a good grade. University professors don't. It's completely up to you to make sure that you're the one keeping track of your assignments, making sure everything's submitted on time, and that you're getting an adequate grade to pass the class.
How much did the workload provided in university differ from high school?
It's set up quite differently. So in university, you'll be in class for each class is about 3 hours a week. I know you have 5 of them, so you'll only be in class for 15 hours during the entire week, unless if you're in engineering, where I believe they take 6 or 7 classes, so that would be 18 to 21 hours. However, there's a lot more stuff you have to do at home. You have to do readings before the classes. They recommend 3 hours per hour of class, so that would be 9 hours additionally on top of going to class. However, I did not find that to be the case. You should definitely prepare for 3 hours per class. But I found that was more like maybe 1 hour per class, or an extra 3 hours per week. But then sometimes things get busy, midterms happen, assignments are due, and then you'll be working for more like 5-6 hours per hour in class. So 3 hours is a guideline, but it definitely varies depending on what time of the year it is.
Did the subjects you learned in high school, did they relate to any of the subjects that you're learning now?
Yes, they did. High school definitely provides the foundational knowledge. For example, if you take pre-calculus, you're going to have to take calculus in university for almost every degree. So that definitely does help. The sciences, they directly build off the sciences from high school. And even social studies and English, every class has some writing component to it. So make sure you're paying attention to those classes so you just get those skills.
What subject in high school proved to be most useful for you for university?
The most useful for me, this is an unconventional one, but probably home economics, where they taught you how to cook. That's something that if you go out to living on your own and you have to cook your own meals, that's definitely a lot of help. But I took all the sciences in high school, and those definitely helped, because even if you do go into humanities, you're going to have to do some science credits. So it helps if you have that advanced biology knowledge or chemistry knowledge, just so that you don't have to work as hard in those elective classes, and you can focus more on your core classes.
What's a common daily workload like for you?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
What's a common daily workload like for you?
The daily workload would probably be about 2 hours in class, then 2 to 4 hours, depending on the day, of just readings, working on assignments, studying for midterms, stuff like that.
Would you say that your degree requires less or more work than others?
It's probably about the average amount of like the workload. I know, like, if you're going to engineering, hard sciences, it's definitely more. However, economics is on the higher end of humanities. There's a lot of coding and math that you need to learn. So it's somewhere around the middle.
What would you say is the biggest difference between high school and university?
Like I mentioned before, your teachers in high school, it's their job to worry about if you're passing the class or not. The professor's job in university is to teach a class. So it's completely up to you to submit your assignments on time, make sure you're studying for the midterm, make sure you're on track to graduate, which is another thing that you're going to have to worry about when you're in university. So that change is probably the biggest one, besides transitioning to, if you leave town, living on your own is also a bit different, but it's definitely not as different as the teaching style.
Do you have any tips that can ease the transition from high school to university?
Yes, definitely talk to a counselor. They're completely free at the university. Well, free as in included in your tuition. They'll make sure that you're on track to being enrolled in all the classes you need to graduate, and attend your professor's office hours. In your first year, the classes are going to be like 200-300 students. So if you can distinguish yourself by going to the classes, you'll get a bit of extra help, a few pointers that the professor can provide you.
Well, thank you. That was my portion done for questions. We have some in the chat, though. Did you specialize in anything, or were there any subtopics of economics that you especially enjoyed?
Yeah, well, I specialized in econometrics, which is just a fancy way of saying models. You make models, you wash data, and behavioral economics, which is kind of a combination of psychology and economics. It's starting to get more and more popular. So if you do think about going to university for economics and you want to take behavioral economics courses, there are going to be more that are offered. Now there's only a handful, and it's also super helpful to everything that you're going to be able to do, because you're going to study human behavior from the economic perspective, and essentially how agents act in a marketplace.
Would you say economics and poli-sci intertwine often in your university courses?
I thought they would. That's why I took economics and political science. I thought that would be able to kind of help me navigate the business perspective of politics, but it didn't. Political science is something completely different from economics, and it requires a completely different framework when you're thinking about it. I do think it helped me, just being able to look at things through a different perspective, and there's a lot of writing involved, which I'm not good at all, so I was able to improve those skills a little bit. But no, most courses or most subjects don't intertwine as much as you'd think they would. A course that would intertwine the most with economics would probably be math. So if you wanted the material to build off each other, then that would be probably your best course of action.
Is university worth the tuition, especially with all the raises in tuition recently?
Well, it comes back to, is your degree going to be marketable, and are you going to be able to get a job after that? A raise in tuition definitely changes the calculus a little bit. However, if you're going to get a job, you're not going to use your student loan recklessly, and you're going to have a proper budget plan, then yeah, it is worth it. But that comes with a caveat that don't use your student loan recklessly. Use every cost-saving tip available to you, and make sure the degree you choose can get you a job afterwards, and not just any job, a job that will allow you to pay back that tuition.
We have one final question in the chat for you. What was your favorite recipe to take away from home that you still make today?
My favorite recipe, we made a really good pizza crust, and pizza crust is very versatile. You can put anything you want on it. So that's one that I have used a lot for the past 4 years. And it's also super cheap.
Nice. Oh, we have one more. Do you plan on getting a master's, or do you think it's not worth it?
Well, a master's is only worth it in certain situations. For example, a master's in economics would allow you to be a professor and maybe work at the Canadian Central Bank, and some select consulting jobs will allow it. So from my experience, I don't think a master's is worth it. Maybe an MBA down the line, who knows? I am more of a believer in professional certifications. So after you have a bit of experience, you go get a professional certification so you can really focus on what you want to. And it's a profession, so it's regulated by an actual code instead of just the holistic knowledge. However, for some things, you just need a master's. For example, if you want to be a psychologist, another humanity, in Alberta, you need a minimum of a master's degree to be a psychologist. So a degree in psychology wouldn't get you much, whereas a master's would get you a decent job. So a lot of it depends on what job you want. So a good way to look at that is ALIS, which is Alberta's, the federal government's kind of job center. It will tell you the degree requirements and the average salary. Look at that when you're trying to make a calculation of what to specialize in. And also just Indeed, look on the job sites and see what the requirements are. If this field you want, everything needs a master's degree, then you're going to want to get a master's degree. But if it doesn't, then there's no reason for you to spend that extra money, because master's degrees are significantly more expensive than bachelor's degrees.
We have another question in the chat for you. How did you choose your electives, like personal interests versus easier courses?
Well, at first I started by going on the subreddit for the University of Alberta and finding the easiest courses. I would recommend against that unless you have a very hard course load coming up. If you have a lot of classes to worry about, then maybe you want the easiest ones. But you also have to think about it like you're going to be spending $600 or close to $600 for these courses. So later on, I had a bit of a paradigm shift, and I started to take more electives that were more relevant and things that you're interested in, but that aren't super marketable. Like an example would be like sociology or something. Sociology is very interesting. You learn a whole bunch. It's not very marketable though. It's hard to get a job with a sociology degree unless if you go into law school or something after that. So use the electives as a way to kind of expand your knowledge, learn things you're interested in, but won't be able to get you a good return on investment.
Okay, well, thank you. Abigail, would you like to continue with the questions? And yeah, that's from me. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so beginning where we left off, I guess. Do you have the opportunity to study abroad with your degree?
Yes, you do. A lot of it depends on the university. The universities will set up these programs, but the University of Alberta does have campuses in, I believe, Japan and Italy. I'm not 100% sure, but they do have that on their website. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely go look at the university's website, see where their campuses are, and that's where you'll be able to study abroad if that's something that interests you.
Is that something that interests you?
No, I didn't study abroad.
Does your university offer any work placements or internships?
Yes, and I would highly recommend that you take one. At the University of Alberta, for art students, it's called AWE, Arts Work Experience, and that allows you to take, I believe, 4 months to 1 full year off university to go work. I believe you have a question about this coming up later on, so I won't answer it right now, but definitely take advantage of that. We'll go into a bit more detail later why.
Have you taken any internships?
No, I had one summer internship,
Hmm.
but I haven't taken a co-op.
Are you or have you had a job while studying?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you have a job? Well, you did mention you did have a job, but have you had other jobs while you were studying?
Well, while I was studying, I would go on Kijiji and find odd jobs that would pay a lot more money than a regular job during the school year. So if someone needs to be moved, they might pay you like $400 for 5 hours of work. Be wary when you're doing that. There's a lot of con artists who will just try and rip you off, but that is an option. You have a 4 month summer, so definitely take advantage of that. I'd usually do 2, sometimes 3 jobs at a time during the summertime just to make as much money as possible, because then that will last you throughout the school year.
I know part of being a student might involve working. So was it ever hard to balance uh, having a job and studying?
Uh, kind of at first, but you get used to it. You definitely need proper time management.
Hmm.
Use a Google Calendar or even a handwritten calendar. Plan out your days ahead of time, and you have a lot more. You have a lot more time than you think when you plan it out ahead.
Hmm. So you did mention that you have a job currently, but are there any, do you plan on getting a different one maybe in the future?
Yeah, well, right now I'm working as an analyst, which is what most, if you study economics, that's where you're going to end up, either consulting or being some sort of analyst some way or the other. I'm also working on professional designation and real estate valuation. So that's something I'm looking towards in the future. However, the most important thing whenever you're trying to get a new job is experience. They're going to look back at that, see if you have the hard skills, the soft skills to perform in the new job. So whatever you want to do, get the experience first. If you have the opportunity to get the experience, then take it and deal with the extra education later. Because
Yeah.
yeah, the employers care more about experience than almost everything else. They're very lenient, in my experience at least, regarding actual certifications than they are regarding if you have zero experience prior. Then they're less likely to
Mhm.
to bring you on.
Yeah. So does university provide you with some connections for jobs?
Uh, yes, so the University of Alberta's is called Campus Bridge, and that's their internal job hiring. Companies will post jobs on Campus Bridge, and also they have career days where you can go and network with HR specialists, add them on LinkedIn, just so that they kind of remember you, because HR specialists are the ones who review your application. So if they
Mhm.
recognize your name, it's more likely that they'll bring you up the chain of command so that you can get an interview.
Yeah. So moving on to living situations, I guess. Do you live on campus?
No, I've never lived on campus.
Mm. Uh, yeah. So are there any specific tools you think that people in, um, I guess economics specifically, should invest in?
Uh, Definitely a good computer. You're going to be doing a lot of data analysis and running a lot of computer code. So a decent computer is important. And a lot of the other resources you have are going to be provided to you by the university. For example, Microsoft Excel. Definitely take the time to learn Excel, and it's free to you, so you can experiment it all you want. And there's also a repertoire of all human knowledge on the internet. So you can easily look up on YouTube advanced Excel functions such as VLOOKUP, pivot
Mhm.
tables. If you have PC, you can use Power Query, which is also another very valuable tool.
So I know these past couple of years have been pretty tough on some people, but yeah, we were kind of wondering, how did COVID affect your specific university experience?
I personally enjoyed studying from home. Uh, the going to class was just a bit of an inconvenience to me. I know it's not the same for everybody. Some people need that in-person instruction. Uh, for me, I enjoyed it. I would do most of the learning on my own anyway. So to me, it was a boon. But
Mhm.
it's I can't speak for everyone though. It depends on how you prefer to learn.
Would you say that there are some qualities that you have learned through COVID, or maybe certain qualities that you have enhanced?
Yeah, well, working from home sounds amazing. Like most people would love to not be able to have to commute to the office every day. But it does take a different skill set, like not getting
Mm.
sidetracked easily. For example, you can probably see my bed in the background. So working from this desk right here, it's a bit of a distraction. Uh, so so studying from home did help me be able to like prepare for working remotely, and it's also even more on you to get your stuff done since you don't even see the professor as a visual reminder to do your work.
Yeah. So sort of moving on here, do you think there's any misconceptions about the field of economics or even humanities in general?
Uh, One of the most common ones is it's not marketable for humanities. And that is, to be completely honest, it's kind of true to a certain extent.
Mm.
There are lots of degrees, programs that you won't be able to find a job in. And if you do, it might not be a high enough paying job to pay off the debt that you took on to get it. However, there are ways that you can make those degrees marketable. For example, getting special certifications. There's some Coursera courses on coding that you can take to enhance your resume. Economics, one of the big ones that nobody really knew about until I had discussions with them, were that we code a lot. There is a whole bunch of coding involved in economics, and it's used for the purpose of essentially washing data. So you're not developing software or anything, but you are using it to perform a multiple regression analysis on, for example, housing prices, what affects the price of housing. So that is a large component to it, and there's also a whole bunch of calculus and statistics.
Mm.
It's very math heavy.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So kind of excluding COVID and kind of just in general, what parts of the journey did you find frustrating?
The electives were extremely frustrating, but there's no way out of them, so you just have to kind of learn to
Mhm.
make the best out of them. Other than that, actually going to the class, waking up and going there, it takes a toll on you after a while. It's not something that's fun, but you also get used to it.
Yeah, it's kind of a big jump from high school to uni where it relies on you more. Um, what about the fascinating parts? Because yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of positives.
Yeah, the flip side of very frustrating electives is that you get to learn things that you would have otherwise never even thought of learning. So, for example, you want to study the history of Christianity in medieval Rome. You have that opportunity to do it if you want to.
Mm.
Any specific topics that pick your interest, you have that ability to study because they have courses on almost everything you can imagine. And if you have to take an elective anyway, you may as well do something that you're at least going to find a little bit fun.
Yeah, like you were saying, something enjoyable for you. Um, if you could go back in time, do you think you'd do the same thing?
Yeah, so this goes back to the co-op question or the artwork experience question that we talked about earlier. I did basically everything wrong in university. I didn't do any serious internships until last summer. I didn't take a co-op, and I didn't do any of the certifications during my degree. You should do all of those things. Look for as many internships as possible. Take a co-op, at least 8 months to go work in the field, and joining clubs. That's another one. Definitely join clubs that would help you become more marketable. Yeah, those just to get that experience so that when you go into the labor force, you don't have nothing to show for it. An example I'll give you is my friend and I. My friend did everything right. He did the co-op. He had 2 or 3 internships during the summers, and he was in a whole bunch of clubs. And he did a specialized certificate. We both graduated around the same time. I had 5 interviews, 3 offers. I believe he had like 15 interviews, 10 offers. So he can choose whatever he wants to do. So if you want more options when you graduate, or even to be able to get a job, depending on how the economy is, it could be a tight labor market. Definitely do those co-ops, do those internships, and join relevant clubs at the university to distinguish yourself.
Yeah, and that advice kind of spans over to just university applications in general.
Yeah, and even now, if you're grade 12, grade 11, you can call around to jobs. So I don't know if you want to be a psychologist or something, or a pharmacist, literally just find a list of all the pharmacists, all the psychologists in Fort McMurray, and call every single one of them and see if they'll let you go and volunteer with them for a few weeks just to see if you like it. The more information, the better, just that you're not choosing a degree that you don't enjoy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we did kind of brush on this with jobs, but are there any specific tips you'd give to students when it comes to managing finances?
To managing finances,
Yeah.
yeah, have a budget and stick with it. You can budget however way you like. I personally like using Excel, and just punching in all the expenses, then dividing it by like where I'm spending the money the most, so I can target where I can save more money. I believe most banks offer that automatically integrated into their system. So if your bank does that, then definitely set it up. And even your credit card, you guys probably aren't 18 yet, but when you have a credit card, it will show you where you're spending your money, if it's food, transportation, stuff like that. And then from there, you can kind of work backwards and see where most of your money is going and how you can reduce your expenses.
Yeah, because finances is definitely a big part of university. And finally, what would you say is the best advice that you've learned that has helped you on your university journey?
The best advice, well, if I could go back and give myself more advice, it would be do a co-op, join some clubs, do internships. The biggest advantage you have when you're a student is the fact that you're a student. You can call employers and say, like, hey, I'm a student, I'm interested in becoming blank. Do you mind if I come in for a week, just see what you guys do? They'll be more lenient with you. In my experience at least, there's a good percentage of them that will just outright say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Another piece of advice is learn time management and be honest with yourself. I know that I don't like working for 5 hours straight on something. So trying to cram studying into a 5-hour block just doesn't do it for me. I'd rather work less hard and spread it out over like 2 weeks, 30 minutes a day. And that's something that you'll find out when you're in university or whenever you have a big course load, how you like to study. If you're a type of person who is totally okay studying away at the same topic for 6 hours straight, then you'll have a bit of a different experience than me. I prefer to break it up into smaller chunks and then just spread it out as long as possible.
Yeah, I'm probably the same way. Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been pretty great. If there's any questions you'd like to ask the speakers, feel free to type them in the chat now. Okay, so here's some of the questions. Is the job that you got straight out of university the job you expected you would get?
Basically, yeah. Like I mentioned, if you go into economics, you're going to either be an analyst or a consultant. So I expected to be an analyst, and here I am. I'm an analyst.
Is there any reasons why you didn't choose to live on campus?
It was cheaper if I lived off campus with family. Like I mentioned, taking out 50K of debt is a huge decision, and that will burden you post university. So to try and minimize that as much as possible would definitely be in your best interest.
Yeah. Did not living on campus make it easier for you? I'm sure financially it did, but was there anything else?
Financially, yes. It is when you live on campus, it is a lot easier to make friends. It's almost designed as like a communal living setup where you're forced to make friends with people. So if that's something that you're worried about, or if you struggle making friends, then definitely consider it. Uh, but it's also more expensive. So you have to kind of weigh the options a bit.
Hmm. What's the best way to find an internship?
So there are a few ways. Of course, Indeed, LinkedIn. Uh, the thing is, they have a lot of applicants, and even Campus Bridge. That's the University of Alberta's internal job board. Different universities have different ones. I can't speak to any other university, but I know it's very common. So if you look on there, apply to all the ones that are of interest to you. And the most underrated way to find an internship is to just call them. A lot of employers are sympathetic to students, and they get money from the government for hiring an intern. So it's a lot cheaper for them.
Mm.
So if you just look at employers you want to work for and call every single one of them, and I'm sure at least one of them will at least consider you.
Is there a specific year you'd recommend people taking on an internship?
Yeah, first year. Do as many of them as you can. If you don't get one first year, it's not the end of the world, but ideally you'd get as many in as possible. It is a lot harder to get one in first year than second year, but if you can, take it. Even now, when you're in high school, you can find an internship with some companies. It's my former job. Basically my entire job was finding high school students internships. So it is possible, and if it's something that you're considering, you might not sure you're not sure. Like in my situation, I should have tried to find a pharmacist I could shadow before going to university. But that's something that you should definitely try and do now. Call some employers, see if they'd be interested in taking you for either volunteering or even some of them will even pay you to go in.
So I know we've talked a lot about uh, clubs and getting more experience, but are there any clubs that you think some students should join?
Yeah, well, the clubs should be whatever you're interested in. So if you're interested in real estate, join the real estate club. If you're interested in becoming a lawyer, join the debate club. There's a whole bunch of clubs at the university, so pick the ones that you think would be the most relevant to the job that you are going to apply for. I know, for example, the investment banking industry, it's very popular among business students. They look specifically into the university's finance clubs, and they actually went to the University of Alberta's finance clubs to gather applications. So if that's something you're interested in, then definitely join one of the clubs.
Is it worth having a credit card in university?
Well, credit cards, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. So if you want to build your credit and show lenders that you're reliable and you're going to pay it back every time, then yeah, it is worth it. A lot of companies will offer free, I guess not technically free, but no annual fee credit cards for students. So you can take advantage of that and use that to increase your credit score. But if you know you're going to be irresponsible and you won't pay off your bill every month, then it's a terrible idea, and don't do that. You're already going to have a student loan. You do not want an extra credit card debt on top of that to pay off.
Yeah. So it kind of does depend on the student, I guess.
Exactly.
How do you organize your time management?
Just a notepad. Write it down. Estimate how much time you'll need, and don't go over that time. I find maybe it's different for you, but for me, I know that if I think it's going to take 2 hours and it takes 2 hours and a half, and it's not pressing, I'm just going to work 2 hours on it, then schedule it in for the next day. I find it's best to do that in the morning before the day starts, and then just just plan it out on either piece of paper. I believe Motion is a good app. I'm not sure how the pricing is on that. Or you can even use Excel to plan out your day. However way you do it, doesn't matter. Just do it.
Does having a car in university help, or is getting around on transit in big cities not terrible?
It depends what city you go to. Edmonton Transit is not very good, but you can still get everywhere you need to go with the transit system. It also depends on where you live. I can't speak to any other city, but in Edmonton, there are huge gaps in the transit line. So if you're not living right on the LRT line or at a bus station hub, then you're going to have a tough time getting around without a car. But a car is another expense. So you do have to keep that in mind. So even when you're looking for living arrangements, maybe try and go closer to a transit line so that you can get to wherever you want to go instead of paying for a car.
I think that's it for the questions so far. So I guess last call if anyone has any other questions to ask. Right then. I think that's it. So yeah, this will be, oh. Do you think we'll be able to move on from oil economically?
Move on from oil economically?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I like this question. So essentially what's happening in the oil market, for anyone who doesn't know, is the oil traders anticipated huge sanctions on Russian oil. Russia provides about a third of Europe's oil and a pretty hefty chunk of America and United States oil. So as an oil trader, you're looking at the geopolitical conflict with the Ukraine, and you're thinking, okay, sanctions are coming. Oil prices are going to go up. So what they did is they bought something called a futures contract. Now, a futures contract allows you to take control of 1 barrel of oil or 1,000 barrels of oil, however many you want, and you don't take control of it until the end of the month. So the idea is you're going to buy those contracts and then you're going to sell them to Shell, Exxon, whoever turns oil into a marketable product, because oil is not really useful in itself. You turn it into gasoline, you turn it into kerosene. So what happened is all the energy traders decided that, hey, oil's going to go up. There's going to be a supply shock, which is a fancy way of saying lower supply, same demand, prices go up. So they loaded up all the contracts. And then when the sanctions actually came, you saw this mid last week, oil actually corrected because they, as they call it in trading, they bought the rumor and they sold the news. So essentially, they drove up the price of oil. We're all paying for it now. And now oil seems to have found resistance at about 109. Do I think it's going to stay at 109 forever? I don't have a crystal ball. I have no idea. Nobody actually knows. But my best estimate is no. There are other ways to get oil into market. There is a strategic reserve, albeit not a very large one. And the sanctions might not last forever, as Germany is feeling it very hard right now, as they might start having to ration their oil if they don't make nice with Russia. So do I think we'll stay at 109 forever? Probably not. This is probably a temporary thing, but also I have no idea. Neither anyone who tells you they have an idea is lying. So I guess we'll see. We'll see in the next few months. I sure hope so.
Do you think sticking with oil right now is a good move for Alberta / Canada, or should we try to get ahead on greener energies? Sorry, I can't read all of that.
So the problem, it's kind of like an Alberta thing to be happy when the oil price goes up because we produce so much of it. The problem we have right now, though, is that we don't really have the means to get that oil to market. So even if we produce a whole bunch of oil, then it's kind of almost fruitless. Like what are you going to do? It's just going to sit in a storage tank. So it might be good because the oil that we are producing is selling for a lot more than it was a few months ago. But it's also very bad for everyone who doesn't work in oil and gas. because the price of oil is incorporated into literally everything. Grocery prices, lettuce doesn't grow in Fort Mac, guys. Sorry to break it to you. It comes from somewhere down south, and it has to be driven all the way up here. So the price of gas being nearly 50% more of what it was 6 months ago does hurt everybody. It does. It might contribute to Alberta's GDP growth, but it probably will hurt more than it will help. As for green energies, of course, it's good to try and diversify your energy economy. But as we've seen in Germany, who put way too much emphasis on green energy, now they're beholden to Russia's oil. So so it's definitely something you want to look at, but you also don't want to put all of your eggs in that basket either.
Also, since you took political science and economics, do you think placing sanctions on countries is actually effective?
I usually don't like to talk about politics when it's being recorded, but I'll just say no. We've actually had sanctions on Russia since 2008. When they invaded Crimea, or 2014, sorry, 8 years, not 2008. 2014, when they invaded Crimea, we've had sanctions on them, didn't deter them at all. We tried putting sanctions on Iran to try and get them to stop their nuclear program, didn't work. Sanctions on Venezuela didn't cause the uprising to end the Maduro regime that they thought it would. I've yet to see an example of sanctions actually doing what they're supposed to do. Usually what ends up happening is it ends up just hurting the poor people in that country and not actually achieving our geopolitical goals. So unfortunately, I don't really think they work.
Do you think public boycotting companies is effective?
Kind of. In the short term, I saw a statistic from, I believe it was Bloomberg, sorry. Bloomberg statistic that said 57% of customers look at the ethical considerations of a company before they buy from it. So that is something that's on the top of companies' minds. However, what seems to happen with boycotts, and this is just an observation, is that they fizzle out after like 2 days. So it'll trend on Twitter. People will burn their Nikes, whatever they're doing, and then it will just kind of stop. Sometimes you get something out of it. Sometimes the executives will cave to the pressure and do something, whatever the people want. But usually a boycott doesn't last very long, and so I don't really think it's effective long term. If you do want a change in the company, then everyone kind of has to change their buying patterns, and then companies will react to that.
Yeah. Did you learn this information at university, or is this research done on your own time?
This is all done on my own time. Another piece of advice, not just for university, just for everything, is read a lot of books. Read all the books you can get your hands on. And even when you're in university, you have access to the university's library system, which lets you access scholarly articles, and scholarly articles are pretty expensive to come by when you're not in universities, when someone's not paying for it. So take advantage of that and read everything you can, absorb as much information as possible. And then you'll be a lot more well-versed when you enter the job market than you would be otherwise.
Is it worth buying university textbooks?
It also depends. If do you like reading it? If you like reading from a book, like I do, and you can retain it better from a book, then maybe don't buy it new. The markup is insane on those textbooks, but you can find them pretty cheap on Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji. However, if you don't mind reading from screen, then you can find them online. Maybe I shouldn't say that out loud. I don't know if that's acceptable to find things online. You can, but don't do it. Or you can buy the online version cheaper if you want to read it online.
Someone's wondering if you thought a tax on water, similar to carbon tax, that could especially hit companies, be effective for the water scarcity issue in Canada currently.
Uh, okay, so here you guys are about to be granted with some economics knowledge here. So what a tax essentially does, what a tax on a good essentially does is try and deter people from buying it. Now that works if goods are inelastic. So if it works if they're elastic. An elastic good is something that bends easily with market forces. For example, I can think of this Yeti mug right here. If there was 10% tax on it, I probably wouldn't buy it. I don't need it. It's very elastic. If I were to lose my job, I wouldn't be going out and buying one of these things. The demand changes based on the price very aggressively. However, some things are inelastic. For example, water, gas, no matter how high the price of gas is, you still have to drive to work. No matter how much water is, how much water costs, you still have to drink it. If you're talking about trying to incentivize companies to use less water in, for example, cooling their plants down, I know paper mills use it a lot to keep everything running smoothly and to invest in different technologies for that. I'd implore you to look at a cap and trade model, which is something kind of new that they're exploring as an alternative to carbon tax, because the carbon tax hasn't really helped at deterring people from buying more gas because you need it, right? It's nothing you can do about it. It's an inelastic good. What a cap and trade model does is it allows companies to use a certain amount. So every company is granted with, let's say, 100 liters of water. That's how many liters of water you can use per day. Then if you're a company that uses, let's say, 50 liters of water, you can sell the ability to use the other 50 liters of water to a company that perhaps uses 150 liters of water a day. And what that does is it incentivizes companies that can cost effectively reduce their water consumption to do so, because now they don't have to buy water permits and they can sell the existing water permits. That's how Tesla made so much money, is they got an EV credit and they sold all their there's a credit to EV companies that basically gives them permission to to sell carbon-based, like fossil fuel run cars. How Tesla made all their money is they do not produce any carbon-based cars that run off fossil fuels. So they sold all of it to Volkswagen for billions of dollars, because Volkswagen produces a lot of fossil fuel-based vehicles. So that's how a cap and trade system works. It's still new. It's not super tested, but it is very interesting. So if you're interested in learning about carbon taxes, you might be interested in learning about this as well.
Do you think we can come to a point where solving climate change and boosting the economy can go hand in hand?
Yeah, the answer is always technological innovation, and that's something that I almost feel gets overlooked in the talk about climate change. Everyone, you're either pro oil or you're anti oil, but the real answer to it is, you reduce we can reduce carbon emissions by 50%. Well, you're just delaying the problem, right? So if you can actually find a way, I believe a British company, I can't remember the name, actually created a way to capture carbon emissions from the air, turn them into little pellets that you can use again as fuel. Something like that, I think, would be the answer. I believe it was called I guess the name the media gave to it was the magic bullet for carbon emissions. It's a British-based company. I believe their big investors are British Petroleum and Suncor. So yeah, that's something that you could definitely look into if you're interested in learning more about some of the technological solutions to carbon emissions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And yeah, the floor for questions is very much open to not just questions about university and being in it, but also specifically what you're studying. Because like you said, it's It's nice learning new things.
Of course.
Yeah, so I think that's it. Done. Thanks a lot. This has been really, really insightful and definitely enjoyable. Yeah, sure, sure it'll encourage some people to, yeah, look into maybe an economics degree.
It's been a pleasure. I hope
Yeah.
I answered some of your questions.